So when a YouTuber goes to make a video, usually one question keeps cropping up on their mind. If I go and cover this topic, how much money will I make? So, since all those Where Are They Now videos do so well, I thought why not give that a go. Hey there guys, I'm Will and welcome to FP1. And now Drive to Survive and the influx of Stan accounts have made F1 more popular than ever, more and more people have started to filter down and show interest in its junior series, mainly Formula 2. If you've never seen it before, just picture the Formula 1 Grand Prix, except everyone likes to drive like they're high off crack cocaine. Now, with this video's monetization completely out the window, let's look at F2's past champions, and where they are now. Okay, now I can't work for free, but luckily I don't have to, as Raid Shadow Legends have kindly offered to sponsor this video. You may remember that I've worked with Raid before, and I'm still playing and enjoying their game just as much as I was back then. If you don't know, Raid Shadow Legends is a leading mobile and PC RPG, where you collect various champions, train them up, and do battle across the realm of Teleria. There's tons of content to sink your teeth into here, but one I'd like to highlight is the Doom Tower, a challenge for both new and experienced players. Doom Tower is a big tower with doom in it. Think of it as like a giant prison, with new enemies to tackle on every single floor, except the power that binds it is failing, meaning those that were locked inside it kinda want to get out. Though they may regret that once they see the state F1 Twitter is in, it's up to you to build an army of champions and take on the tower one floor at a time. It'll be easy early on, but as you progress, the bosses will get more and more challenging, with some needing specific mechanics to beat them. That's not all though, as this month Raid introduced a brand new feature into the game called Awakening, plus another new dungeon, the Iron Twins Fortress. You may need to awaken some of your champions before you go in here. This will let you choose a powerful blessing to transform how they perform in battle. And if you want to add to your champion roster, the Raid team just released a super-powered legendary version of Death Knight called Ultimate Death Knight. Makes sense? The best part is you can unlock him completely for free, just by logging in and playing Raid for 7 days between now and the 27th of October. And there's even more free stuff if you use the promo code DKRises, which will allow you to level your strongest champion all the way to the max level 50. So there's really not been a better time to start playing Raid. And if you haven't downloaded it yet, scanning the QR code on screen or clicking the link in the description will give you a bunch of unique bonuses worth $30. We're talking a free epic champion in the form of Aina, 200,000 silver, an energy refill, an experience boost, and an ancient shard, so you can summon more champions right from the get-go. All of that treasure will be waiting in your inbox, which you can access here. So be sure to download Raid using the link in the description. Now let's cover some F2 champions. Picking a starting point for this list is tougher than it looks. We could only focus on the modern day F2, which as of 2022 has 6 champions, all of which are now in F1 to some degree. Cool video, done, see you later. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I could also go all the way back to 1967, where Jackie X won the title for Tyrrell, but let's be honest, that would take me all day, and 90% of that information you wouldn't give a shit about. So let's meet somewhere in the middle and start with GP2, which ran from 2005 up until 2016, where the second tier transformed into what we know it as today. The first 2 champions on this list I'm going to group together, Nico Rosberg in 2005, and some dude called Lewis Hamilton in 2006. The pair have been friends since their karting days, both won with ART and would progress to Formula 1 in the following years, Nico with Williams in 2006, and then Hamilton with McLaren in 2007. While Lewis hit the ball rolling with 9 consecutive podiums starting from his debut in Australia, that was a bit harder for poor Nico here. He was in the Williams after all. That said, when the car wasn't the flashes of pace were still there, scoring his first podium at the opening race in 2008, and following that up with an excellent P2 later that year in Singapore, a result that was sadly overshadowed by other things. Rosberg would get fed up with Williams and jump ship to Mercedes for the start of 2010. The German outfit had just bought the previous year's champions Brawn and dragged Michael Schumacher out of his retirement home, though were upper midfield runners at best. That would start to change when Schumacher was ditched for Hamilton in 2013, who by this point had been trundling around in an unreliable McLaren and demonstrating his hatred for Brazilians. So, 2 teammates who were once childhood friends. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. At the dawn of the turbo hybrid era in 2014, Mercedes became competitive, when their drivers weren't running into each other. Hamilton would take the title in 2014 and 15, but Rosberg would finally get one over the Briton in 2016, promptly deciding he couldn't be f***ed anymore and retiring from the sport. Lewis, meanwhile, would continue the Mercedes domination era until 2021, which we're not allowed to talk about. While he continues to race for Mercedes this year, Nico is better known for having a team in the Extreme E series, shoving GoPros up his arse, and being a talking head on Sky Sports F1. So let's move on to 2007, where another German would take the GP2 crown. A man by the name of Timo Glock. Like his predecessors, he would quickly be promoted to F1 with Toyota in 2008. Here, he too would show off his passionate hatred towards the people of Brazil. This wouldn't be his first running in a Grand Prix car, however, as Glock had raced sporadically for Jordan throughout 2004. Glock would see occasional periods of success, like his maiden podium at Hungary in 2008, or his strong start to 2009. Though when Toyota said adios to F1 at the end of the year, he was stuck with the Virgin outfit for the last 3 years of his career, which, as the name suggests, were full of excitement in the beginning but were profoundly unimpressive. Post F1, Glock would race in DTM, ending the year 5th in both 2018 and 2020. He also attempted the Bathurst 12-hour race for BMW in 2017 and 18, to varying success. In 2022, he's apparently competing in Brazilian stock cars, and doing very well, if you trust Wikipedia, that is. But going back to our list of champions then, let's look at 2008, won by Italian driver George Pantano. And I all know what you're asking. Who the f*** is this guy? Pantano was actually the guy Glock replaced at Jordan in 2004, as he had been having contract disputes with the team. He returned to the second tier of motorsport in 2005, eventually winning with racing engineering. After this, he wouldn't do much, opting to dabble in series like IndyCar and Super League Formula. Yeah, I don't know what that is either. GP2's 2009 champion is thankfully a little bit more memorable. His name? Yeah, that joke's deader than Ricciardo's career, isn't it? Regardless, Hulkenberg would graduate to F1 with Williams in 2010, where he had an up and down yet overall solid year, topped off with a shock pole position at the penultimate round in Brazil. This wouldn't be enough to save his future, however, as Williams sacked Hulk, forcing him to be test driver for Force India in 2011. He would progress to a race role and make a Formula 1 return in 2012, where he very nearly won the final race of the season, were it not for a crash in the closing stages. Hulk would then go to Sauber for a year in 2013, before returning to Force India the following season, finally settling down until 2017, where he moved again, this time to Renault. Nico was always pretty solid over his time in Formula 1, but let's be honest, never looked like he was champion material. At the end of 2019, Renault got a hard-on over the French flag and replaced Hulkenberg with Esteban Ocon. And ever since, Nico has become F1's go-to super sub whenever a driver contracts the illness that we can't talk about over here. His most recent outings came for Aston Martin in the opening 2 rounds of the season, and as I write this, he's still in the running for the seats at Haas and Alpine for 2023. Though I'll be real, I don't see either of those happening. This means Nico hasn't done too much outside of Formula 1, though he did win Le Mans in 2015. That is his only podium since 2009 though. When the GP2 championship was won in 2010, no one knew what they were witnessing. No one knew that an F1 legend was about to hit the scene. Just kidding, it was Pastor Maldonado. Pastor, of course, would go on to have a very successful career in F1. Meme pages. He was very quick on his day though, taking to date Williams' last Grand Prix win at Spain in 2012. After this, he almost joined Ferrari, which I have a video on if you're interested. That would fall through though, and he ended up stuck with Lotus for the last 2 years of his career. When his money ran out, he was booted from the team, and spent most of his time since in the FIA World Endurance Championship, picking up a win in Spa of 2019. The next GP2 champion on our list would have an equally divisive career, as 2011 was won by a certain Romain Grosjean. Romain had of course competed in a few races for Renault at the back end of 2009, though saw his full-time F1 debut with Lotus in 2012, where he grew into the habit of hitting things. A race ban later that year didn't help matters, but Romain arguably matured over time, leaving Lotus in 2016 to help the startup of the Haas Formula 1 team. Having left F1 in a literal blaze of glory in 2020, Romain has since been racing fairly competitively in IndyCar, while still keeping up his favourite hobbies. Grosjean won the 2011 GP2 title with the Dams team, and the French outfit would do it all again the year after, triumphing with Italian Davide Valsecchi. Valsecchi's a bit of a weird one here. Despite having a lot of pace in F2, He's the first driver on this list who never got to Formula 1 full-time, having only tested an F1 car between 2010 and 2013. When Kimi Raikkonen decided he just didn't want to take part in the final few rounds of the 2013 season, VALSECCHI was expected to be his replacement, though even then, the drive instead went to Heikki Kovalainen. Davide would then be forced into GT cars for the remainder of his career, and after admittedly zero success, he became a TV pundit for Formula 1. But at least people still remember the enthusiastic Italian. The same can't be said for 2013's champion Fabio Leimer. Fabio was actually, I've forgotten the word. Actually, that sums up Fabio Leimer. Maybe it's because that year was a bit of a dud when it came to talent in the category, but nevertheless, Leimer would go on to race in other series, including WEC and the last 2 rounds of the inaugural season of Formula E. His last known whereabouts were the Ferrari Challenge Europe series in 2017, but I don't think anyone's looking for him. So, with 2 champions unsuccessful in progressing to Formula 1, would the series strike gold in 2014? Well, it struck Jolyon Palmer. Now look, I like Jolyon. In fact, he was the first F1 driver I ever met, and was a lovely guy. Just not very good in F1. Palmer would have to wait in the wings as an F1 test driver for Lotus in 2015, before finally getting the call-up the year after when the team rebranded to Renault. Jolyon would only score 1 point all year though, and despite a solid 6th place at Singapore in 2017, by this point the team were fed up and just paid him not to race for the last 4 rounds of the season. Palmer has since commentated F1 for the BBC and provides really good analysis on F1's YouTube channel, which I would highly recommend you check out if you haven't already. Jolyon's career may have ended up being a bit underwhelming, but he's not the biggest letdown on this list. That's coming soon. In fact, it's coming now, it's Stoffel Vandoorne. After dominating the GP2 title in 2015, Vandoorne was tipped as the future of the McLaren Formula 1 team, and though he sat on the sidelines mostly through 2016, he did make his debut in Bahrain that year. Vandoorne would haul a woeful McLaren Honda into the points on debut, however, basically signing the coffin on Jenson Button's career, as the Briton was moved aside for the Belgian in 2017. This is where things would go wrong, however. With a tough car and an even tougher teammate, Vandoorne would flop, never being able to outqualify the impressive Alonso. Even when Nando retired at the end of 2018, McLaren still decided they wanted to sack Vandoorne, and since, Stoffel has gone on to race admittedly quite competitively in WEC and Formula E. Most recently, he won the title with Mercedes in 2022, and though his next destination is unclear at the point I make this video, he seems at least to have an exciting career ahead of him, unlike Fabio Leimer. GP2's last champion would be Pierre Gasly, but the Frenchman would have to wait a little bit before his shot at Formula 1. Having finished second in Super Formula in 2017, Gasly would finally get the call up to the Toro Rosso squad at the back end of that year, not scoring any points, but still doing enough to convince the team he was better than Danny Kvyat. He would then have a solid season in 2018, and with Ricciardo about to ruin his career, took up the option to be servant to Lord Verstappen at Red Bull. But we all know how this went, and in case you don't, let's just say it didn't go very well. My first ever video on this channel haunting me to this very day. Having been sent back to the junior team, Gasly would at least get his time to shine when he won the Italian Grand Prix for AlphaTauri in 2020, and though things haven't looked so good this year, he's still in the frame of finally leaving the Red Bull family to move to Alpine in 2023. 2016 would be the last year of GP2, as the series would then morph into the FIA F2 Championship for 2017, and along with that, came a certain Monegasque driver by the name of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc would wipe the floor with the competition that season, earning him an F1 drive with Alfa Romeo in 2018. Another solid year here saw him quickly promoted to Ferrari, where he's still being routinely f***ed to this day. The 2018 F2 season was a titanic battle between 2 names we're all quite familiar with today, Lando Norris and George Russell. George would take the title, but arguably lose out in the short term. While Norris went straight to McLaren, he had to drive a Williams, and he'd of course stay there until 2022, where Mercedes finally threw out the moulding bread that was Valtteri Bottas and signed up the British junior. Russell may be yet to take his first win, but both himself and Norris are setting themselves up to be the stars of the future. And could that also be said about Nick de Vries? A few weeks ago, I'd have never said he'd be able to get to Formula 1, but after his impressive debut at this year's Italian Grand Prix, well, who knows? What maybe held de Vries back was that it took 2 years of mediocre results before he finally took the title in 2019, and that the field that year was just a bit meh. Like many on this list, the VRIES would then head to WEC and Formula E, finding more success in the latter, taking the title there in 2021. 2 wins would follow the next year, but he would end the season 9th in the standings. That said, his performance in Monza might just have kicked the 27-year-old's prospects back into gear. Nothing's a certainty in Formula 1. But I don't quite think we've seen the last of this guy. On to 2020 then, and here it would be Mick Schumacher taking the honours. That said, there's not much left to say here. I mean, he graduated with Haas, crashed a fair bit, and now looks to be out of a drive. I did a whole video on this guy, so go and check that out. What about 2021 then? And here we find a name you're probably sick and tired of hearing now. Oscar Piastri, the now former Alpine junior, won the F2 title, having just claimed similar honours in FIA F3. However, he arguably got to F1 at the wrong time, with no seats left on the grid, and was thus forced to sit on the pit wall in 2022. Now we all know what happens next, and don't worry, I'm not going to cover it. Let's just see if he can live up to the hype with McLaren in 2023. So we're almost done, but there's one more name on this list, and there's not much to say about him since he won the F2 title merely a week ago. It's Felipe Drugovich. Felipe finds himself very much in a De Vries situation. No F1 backing, and no seats, in dire need for a rookie. He has, however, at least got his foot in the door as the reserve driver for Aston Martin. Whether that's much of a good thing, I'll leave up to you, but I'm guessing we'll either see this guy in Indy or WEC next year. But that's it then. A rather long video for sure, but now we've covered all the F2 and GP2 champions going all the way back to 2005. If you enjoyed it and want to see more, then give me a hand by giving this video a like and hitting that big red subscribe button. Thanks again to Raid for sponsoring this video, and to all my patrons for supporting the work I do. If you want to help me and the channel out, or just check out any of my other socials, the links to everything can be found down in the description below. Anyway, that's all from me. I'll see you soon with another video, but until then, have a good one.